Hello folks, Middle89 here, welcome back to the channel. This video I wanted to talk about Scorpio and how it's linked to self-initiation, and it is otherwise the ascension sign in the occult, and why that is. And because I've experienced firsthand a lot of my major initiations and activations when the sun has been in Scorpio with the new moon, or it being full moon opposite in Taurus, which is right along our galactic plane. So there's high energies that come in through the sign of Scorpio when the sun is in that sign, especially from a northern hemisphere perspective, because this is how all these like fairy tales and myths have been told to us when obviously experiencing these change of angular light due to the Earth's axis tilt, giving us the change in seasons. So when the sun obviously falls from the September equinox, it starts depleting its life force. And so you can think, as above, astrotheologically, this is one interpretation. Jesus is otherwise the sun in that regard. And as the sun passes down through Libra and into Scorpio, where you got the sun passing through with its 12 disciples, which are otherwise the 12 signs of the zodiac, Scorpio is otherwise depicted as Judas. Yeah? And so as the sun falls, we also get obviously the leaves start falling off in preparation for winter. So the trees start shedding their seeds and their leaves. And because Scorpio governs the sacral plexus, which is the sexual faculties of our bodily cosmos, so our, as above, so below, microcosm, it's linked with, insemination, sex and reproduction, and rebirth and resurrection. And this is why, in nature, this pattern is seen as well as in ourselves, because we're all born of nature. And the sign itself is otherwise fixed water. And so anything that is, deep within the ocean is obviously in shadow. It's in darkness. So it's the perfect sign that depicts our collective darkness, or our soul's darkness, from which we can start pulling memory from. Because, what is mem in Arabic or Hebrew? It's otherwise water, which is the root word of memory. And so water, it's very powerful in that regard, and that's obviously governed by the moon, which is also tied in with Scorpio in that sense. But it also, depicts, as going back to the astrotheological perspective, Judas. So you've got the 12 disciples, or otherwise the 12 signs of the zodiac, and Judas is depicted as Scorpio, because as the sun comes down, depletes its life force, it gets stung by the scorpion, and the scorpion obviously has the stinger. And now what's interesting, it talks about in the Bible that Judas is the backbiter and obviously backstabbed Jesus in the story, which is just the sun, and administered the kiss of death, as it was told. And what's interesting, scorpions, when they sting, certain scorpions, when they sting you, it actually leaves like a kiss mark above and below where the sting is. So it looks like someone's like kissed you, and that's otherwise noted as the kiss of death. And so you've got the animals as well in the scorpion sign. So you have obviously the snake, the scorpion, and these are just all aspects of our consciousness and ourselves as we go through the initiations to merge back into our higher mind, or become, what it is to be human and or like an angel in terms of achieving higher consciousness. So you've got the snake, the scorpion, and the eagle, and then the phoenix. And the phoenix obviously represents that kind of dying, death and rebirth cycle, which is obviously what Scorpio governs as well, because Pluto, which is otherwise Hades, Lord of the Underworld, domiciles in Scorpio. Like he domiciles in Scorpio, that's his house, that's his mansion, that's what he loves. And Pluto's linked to death and resurrection and rebirth as well, so it goes hand in hand. And what's interesting, I've got my moon and my moon and Pluto in Scorpio. Alright, so all the phoenix represents is when you have been initiated and go through these signs with certain events. Like I've had two really huge conscious shifting events when the sun was in Scorpio. One of which was when I encountered the two orbs in the woods and the shapeshifter being. And then another one was when I did some grid work in the New Forest and I got attacked heavily. And that was again another testing time, and that for me was like the last time I took any mushrooms, because I knew by that point that I was kind of on the map with the things I was doing, and my consciousness was so far elevated that it would have been difficult if I did do another one to shut off and protect myself from entity attachment and attacks. So I knew by that point it was kind of like I gleaned the most I could from the mushrooms, and it was like from here I'm going to do everything organically, which is absolutely fine because I'm so sensitive as it is with the work that I've done. So yeah, Phoenix otherwise represents the dying of your old self and the birth and renewal through fire, which is often linked with transformation and purification. To be born again is like a phoenix, and the eagle represents the soul, and the eagle is obviously that higher aspect of mind where you got perfect 20/20 vision and can soar the highest above all other creatures on the plane, and have the vision, the spiritual vision basically, and that's what's depicted. And I've had so much symbology of eagles and other animals for that matter, but eagles, snakes and scorpions, because after my activations I had huge affinity with Antares. And Antares is otherwise the star, that is a huge, great big star, which is linked to the heart of the scorpion in the Scorpio constellation. And what's interesting, because it is, even though it's a fixed water sign, which obviously represents our shadow, it's Scorpio is otherwise, linked closely to Ophiuchus, which is that secret sign, which I actually bear the sign of here on my little finger, and he's otherwise the healer. And he's the serpent bearer, but also within that kind of section of the night sky in our star system, you've got Lyra, Cygnus, and Aquila, which is the eagle itself, the swan, and Lyra is otherwise basically where Stargate 12 is meant to be. So the density 4 universe accessing to density 5, which is where basically the gods reside, and if your most highest version of yourself would be emanating from. Alright, so when the sun and these certain planets, especially the sun and the moon, pass through Scorpio, then the sun itself is a stargate. So in order for you to get into these grids, you have to travel through stargates. This is how you get down into these places in order to incarnate and to inhabit bodies, to have these experiences. So when the sun and that pass into these signs, not only is it channeling the scorpion energies, but it's channeling the deacons, which are like the constellations which are close by, either side of that ecliptical band that the sun orbits through from, as viewed from Earth. So you've got the Lyran star system. So I'm surmising here that the reason why it is the kind of occult sign of ascension and self-initiation is because you are able to actually channel and anchor in really high parts of your consciousness through the sun when it aligns direct to the Lyra star system and the Ophiuchus star systems, because all these stars are consciousness at the end of the day that have energies that you can bestow. And Ophiuchus, when in Scorpio, is the perfect complement in order to protect yourself when encountering the sting of the Scorpio, because trust me, Antares is otherwise linked with the devil and Lucifer, because if you look at the sign of Scorpio, it actually has the M with the little devil tail at the end of it. And otherwise, like I said before, governs the sacral plexus, which is sex, lust and desire. Okay, so it governs all the aspects that Lucifer is otherwise linked with, like what is it you desire, and it's all sex and lustral sexual energy, which is those two lower faculties of mind. So this is why it's, through sex transmutation it's so important to control that energy, because it's the most powerful energy in the universe. So if you don't control it, you can be stung by it, and trust me, I've been stung by it. And what's interesting, like I said, after having my activations, I had so much synchronicity with Antares that I thought was actually Antares starseed, given the fact that I've got the little finger, the secret sign of Ophiuchus there and stuff like that. It's always linked to Lyra and the Stargate system that I found out for Ashley Dean's work that I put a video about. So it's all tying in. And so all of the occultists talk about this. So I believe that is definitely founded in reality, and that if you want to seek, trying to connect more of your consciousness, then do some of these rituals up with the mushrooms and the entheogens. Obviously, just be careful, prepare yourself when the sun and the moon is in Scorpio, because you're going to get the most amount of, I guess, activation and experience doing it around those times, because you're pulling, parts of yourself that otherwise is lost in the depths of the Scorpion Sea, as it were, in that kind of part of the cosmos, which could be drifting around, and you encounter forces that are, quite challenging, but growth only comes from challenges and suffering, so it's like two sides of the same coin in that regard. What's interesting, fire, like I said before, fire, obviously with the Phoenix being reborn again, Antares, we celebrate here in the UK, November 5th, Guy Fawkes, which is remember the 5th of November, gunfire, treason and plot. What's interesting, my granddad, this is another synchronicity, my granddad ended up dying by fire on November 5th, right on bonfire night. So whether he's got associations maybe in past lives with Guy Fawkes himself, and this whole burning of his effigy, which is almost like a giant ritual as well with the poor soul, because he wanted to blow up Parliament because they were otherwise, you know, crooks basically. So he's doing the right thing. He's obviously depicted as a villain. This is what they do, they invert, in order to protect the narrative of us kind of, or the rest of the masses praising the governments and falling in love with their servitude. So yeah, I just found that really interesting. Obviously you got, around that time of year, like I said before, the seeds fall from the trees, which is iconical obviously of sex, which is what it governs, the sacral plexus. So the trees basically reproduce around that time, they drop their seed, and then, so when it, 9 months later, they kind of sprout again, which will be around literally summer solstice in June 21st. I think that'll be roughly like 9-10 months, mimicking gestation. So all these things tie up, and I've had times where I was working on the yachts prior, after encountering those two orbs in the woods. I've made a video about this. I'd be working and I'd see like there's a boat there called Antares, literally, and the light at night would be flicking on and off, and there'd be these beings that I swear to God that I see just fucking teleport out of fucking nowhere. And there was all these random entities that just did not look human, but took human form, but you can just tell there's something about them, that they were just checking up on me, and all these random lights that were kind of shone on me through like reflective mirrors and shit. And then one night, the boat left, so the boat called Antares left, and then the next morning it was replaced by a boat which was called 1111. I could not fucking believe it. And like, this was all around the time when I started to discover my spirit animals as well. So this shit is real. So if you're brave enough to kind of face your shadow and the forces that are emanating during those times a year, from those star systems, which is just otherwise, parts of yourself that you can kind of anchor down here in these lower densities, then you will have profound experiences and be able to unlock, greater results with your spiritual work, in terms of going from, being a snake stuck on your belly, only being able to see the world, down here in the carnal material realm, to, becoming an eagle. So you've got flight, you can master that air element, and then you obviously Phoenix, which is, part of yourself. When you go through these initiations, part of yourself dies, because you give up the old way of life and the habits that otherwise weren't serving you. So in the eyes of other people, a lot of the time, that is seen as a death. And I've been through probably two of these. Probably two of these in the last 3 years, going through these initiations. And like I said, the grid work I did when I was in the New Forest, this was my second time after the encounter in the woods. I experienced huge fucking sting with the scorpion, like big time. I got absolutely hammered, and I almost lost, I wouldn't say lost my consciousness, but it was a battle to retain my consciousness. Luckily I got it back, but I had flashes of my granddad burning in the fire, so I had that association with obviously that being in my gene codes and cellular memory coming up, which was pretty horrific, and a lot of malevolent forces. And what was interesting, the week after that event, they obviously came back in, these dark regressives who were staying around that area, had to restore the satanic inversive energy there by slaughtering a load of sheep and putting the inverted pentagram on there, and the 666 and the inverted cross, and spraying graffiti in a church with all this stuff, and it made the news, which I'll probably do another video about how like grid wars work in terms of the energy grids here on Earth and stuff. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting to share. And what was another one, obviously the Scorpio just gone with the new moon, I got fucking absolutely stung really bad, but through one of my old mates. One of my old mates, just out of nowhere, basically on my Instagram, posted a comment that just went, oh, you can feel the sting. Like someone that posted, because I haven't seen him in a while, that's kind of a bit of bad feelings in terms of him maybe feeling neglected and abandoned, even though it takes a two-way street to fucking, build a healthy relationship. And I've not heard it from him in ages, but I posted something to do with like, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And it was like a good bit of research that kind of proved that saying, when they did this this research, finding that people hang out, fat people tend to be fat, people hang out, poor people tend to be poor. So it's scientifically proven. He obviously saw that. It's like me having a go at him and my old group of friends, and he just went against my family and stuff. And I was like, that was bang on the new moon. So when the moon was literally right next to the sun in Scorpio, I was like, I knew immediately but that was the sting that was coming in through those forces, which I've always linked to Antares. You know, so it's really, really quite interesting. So expect a lot of synchronicity if you do a lot of work around when the sun and the moon is in Scorpio, to unlock, you know, a lot of these experiences, which, like I said, going through it can be quite testing, but you can only grow from challenges. All right, and so it's beautiful. As a result of all this, you know, I never regret anything I've done looking back, and it's taught me a lot, none more so than how strong I am and how beautiful this journey is, and it is the hero's journey. And if we all follow the path of the sun in that regard, you sync up with the kind of path of the sun and the cycles as it goes through the zodiac signs, you'll start seeing certain characteristics and forces at play subtly through these energies that will influence you as above so below in your microcosm and within your immediate environment. And so when you open yourself up to that, you become the eagle and the phoenix in that regard. You have supervision, super spiritual vision to be able to go and see these things infiltrate your life in your consciousness, awareness, which is, you know, beautiful. So don't fear the scorpion. That's basically the message. And embrace it, embrace the shadow, do a lot of work in the deep waters, which is obviously mem. In Arabic, it's mem, which is the root word of memory, which water is linked with our memory. So don't be afraid to, you know, take a deep dive when these celestial bodies are in Scorpio. And check out your chart as well. So there might be some synchronicities there. So, you know, where your moon, like for me, my moon and Pluto is in Scorpio. There's some pretty dark energies there, you know, pretty which probably, you know, I encountered as a result of that I was channeling during some of these experiences. But it's all part of the journey of getting to know thyself, you know, knowing the forces, the heavenly bodies, in other words, govern energies and consciousness that have a direct influence for our subconscious. And so it's all part of integrating more of your subconscious into your conscious, so there's no more deep waters and it's all shallow, so you can see exactly what the fuck is going on in your life and within your body, mind, spirit complex. Right guys, thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.